Welcome to this series of videos on sales and operations planning. This is a continuation of what we were doing with aggregate planning in the last couple of weeks, and yeah. So the idea here is to manage aggregate plans and manage sales that you can have during aggregate plans, right? So let's get going. So the important things that we'll be looking at is the idea of predictable variability, um, and the idea of how you can manage this predictable variability by looking at both the supply side and the demand side. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So what is predictable variability, and how can you manage predictable variability or respond to predictable variability? Well, predictable variability is change in demand that can be forecasted. So when you look at demand, there are many aspects to demand, and there are in many situations you can predict what your demand is going to be based upon things like seasonal variations, random variations, and the time the time of the point where it exists on its product life cycle. You can put all of those things together and you can come up with a decent demand forecast. And then you can look at the demand forecast, which might be different for different time periods, say for different months or different weeks or different quarters. And then you can and we did this with the aggregate plan. You made a different plan for different months. You are holding different inventories, make a different production each month, and so on, right? If you don't manage this predictable variability well, then it can result in increased costs and also decreased responsiveness in supply chains. And there are two broad options of managing predictable variability. One is managing the supply, and the other is managing demand. And the way you let's talk about this. The way you manage supply is using capacity. By capacity, we mean production capacity, inventory, having backlogs and not having backlogs, maybe even having some subcontracting. So that's the supply side. And on the demand side, you can manage your demand by looking at short-term price discounts, promotions, and things like that. And these are important, because if you have very high demand in some months and very low demand in other months, you could sort of have discounts and promotions so that your demand gets smoothed out, so that you can have a much less you can have much less variability in demand. When you have less variability in demand, then that leads to a better plan. You're able to manage it better, right? So, what are the things that you can do to manage capacity? So, here are a few common ways in which capacity management can be done. So, remember, managing supply involves managing capacity, inventory, subcontracting, and backlog. So, we'll look at all four of these. But much of this particular chapter is going to be about managing demand. But let's quickly look at what managing supply entails, right? So managing capacity includes, so you can have time flexibility for your workforce. So you can have overtime, some overtime hours, or maybe people don't work full time all the time. They work part time for some time and work full time. You could have a seasonal workforce. Amazon does this a lot, especially around in their warehouses, especially around holiday seasons. They have large seasonal workforces to take on the extra demand that they expect to face. Then we can use subcontracting. So again, it's a very common thing in many manufacturing industries or even service industries, that you use subcontracting to manage some of the capacity that you are not able to do yourself. You can have different kinds of facilities, specialized and flexible facilities. So specialized flexibility takes care of demand during the regular it takes care of regular demand, and flexible facilities can take care of demand during the peak seasons like holiday seasons and special occasions and so on, right? Designing product flexibility into production processes is not easy, but if you are able to do that, then that is a easy way in which you can manage capacity in a supply chain. Another thing that you can do obviously is managing inventory. So if you can have common components across multiple products is a very common thing. Apple does this and they do it really well. Building inventory of high demand or predictable demand products, again, many companies do this. A very common sort of technique to manage inventory, right? And the other thing that you can do is, we can look at the inventory and the capacity trade-off. The trade-off here is that if you have high capacity, you'll end up holding high amounts of inventory, which means the inventory cost is high, but you will be able to manage seasonal variations. But if you have low inventory, you will have to ramp up and down your capacity up and down a lot, and that itself can be expensive. So it's sort of a trade-off between inventory and capacity, right? So that is how you can manage the supply side of the equation. Now let's see what you can do to manage the demand side of the equation, and we'll talk about sales and operations planning and so on, right? So managing demand. So what you can do is you can have promotions, you can have discounts, um, um, and you can have coupons and a lot of other things that you can do to manage demand. And they all fall under the broad umbrella of promotion. And there are three factors that lead to increased demand during promotion. One is market growth, the other is stealing share, and finally it is forward buying. So let's talk about all three of these things. So what is market growth? So let's say that you offer, so let's say that Toyota offers a promotion on its Camry. Then it might happen that some people who were looking to buy a Corolla or a Prius might instead buy a Camry, in which case the market for the high end sedan has actually grown. So the whole market has grown. Instead of these people buying smaller cars, now they're buying larger cars. So there's market growth. The second is stealing share. Stealing share means that, uh, going back to the same example of a Toyota Camry, people who were potentially going to buy a Honda Accord could potentially end up buying a Toyota Camry. There also the market grows, but you're stealing share from a competitor. So the overall market for big sedans does not grow, but it sort of reallocates from Honda to a Toyota a little bit. And finally, the third reason why demand goes up in the short term is forward buying. Forward buying is where you were already going to buy a Toyota Camry, but then you realize that there is a sale, so you end up buying it right now rather than doing it some point in future. So forward buying is where companies they 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 eat some of their demand from future months and move it to the current month. So they cannibalize some of their own demand. So in forward buying, the overall demand for Toyota Camry did not go up, but more people are buying it this month rather than sometime in the future. And based on time value of money, that might actually make a difference for you in overall profit, right? So that's the way in which you can manage demand. So factors influencing the timing of promotion. So the the important thing to think about here with managing demand is, do you offer a promotion when demand is high, or do you offer a promotion when demand is low? When do you do it? Now, there is no simple answer to this question. Sometimes it might make sense to to promote when demand is high, sometimes when demand is low. So what are the factors under which you do these things? So let's here is a comprehensive list of things to keep in mind. So if you expect high forward buying, right, then you should promote during low demand periods. This sort of makes sense. So forward buying implies that people who are going to buy a product later on are buying it right now. So if you do it during low demand periods, uh, periods in which your demands were going to be high, will instead buy right now, and that way your demand gets smoothed out. If you have a smoother demand, then you can have smoother production, then you can have smoother levels of workforce. Everybody is happier, right? Now, if there is a high ability for you to steal market share, so that is if you do promotions and it turns out that people who are going to buy, I don't know, Ford trucks instead buy Toyota Camrys, then you're increasing a market share. It makes it makes sense for you to do that during peak demand periods. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if you have a high ability to increase the overall market, then again, peak demand period. If your margin is high, then you should do it in peak demand periods. But if your margin is low, you should do it in low demand periods, right? And the same goes for high manufacturing holding costs for in low demand periods, high costs of changing capacity, that is hiring people or letting people go, having overtime and so on. If those costs are very high, then you should promote during low demand periods. And if retailer costs are high, then this decreases forward buying by retailers. So that means that you should not, again, then you have to coordinate with the retailer to figure out exactly when you do it, because your peak demand period and the retailer's peak demand periods might not align exactly. And the same goes for high promotion elasticity of customers. So this also decreases forward buying by the retailer. Right? So this is the idea behind sales and operations management, which is figuring out when should we give out these promotions. Should we do them in low demand periods, or should we do them in peak or high demand periods, right? So in this video, we looked at the idea of predictable variability, and how you can manage predictable variability, or think about predictable variability by looking at the supply side and the demand side. So in the next video, we will go over how you can actually use linear programming to look to do sales and operations planning. Figure out when you should be giving out promotion. Should you be doing it in high demand periods, or should you be doing it in low demand periods? Right. I'll see you soon. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.